educator for the Waitaki Whitestone Geopark. And part of what we do for our educational outreach are monthly public talks that we hold. This year we've decided to travel around the countryside, and first stop is Katanui. So different speakers at different locations. And our other talks, a number of our other talks have been recorded and are on our website. This one will also be recorded and uploaded, which you can access via our website as well. And just a couple of health and safety. If we do experience an earthquake, then we'll drop cover hold. And once the shaking stops, we will leave the building. There's a couple of exit points. There's the door that you came in through, or a door at the rear, and the meeting point for any emergency will be in the car park at the rear of the building. Toilets down this corridor and behind me, behind the stage there, where the toilets are. Now, this evening we have the huge pleasure of having James Scott visit us from the University of Otago, the Geology department. And I'm sure you've all seen the little flyer about what he's speaking about this evening. So his title of his talk this evening is The Ancient Volcanoes that Formed Oamaru and Kakanui. So I'm sure you're all pretty interested to find out about these volcanoes and how old they are and how they're formed. Often we find it's quite, we're all quite surprised that yes, there were volcanoes. So how we're going to run this evening is I'll hand over to James shortly, and then we'll wrap up close to 7 o'clock with a question and answer time, and then we'll be away at 7 o'clock. So sit back and relax, and James, over to you.
Good to go? All right. Okay, so the ancient volcanoes that formed Oamaru and Kakanui. So my first question for you is, where is the one place in New Zealand that has been explored for diamonds? Katanui, right. Oh, someone knew the answer. Thunder's stolen already. You could stand at the front here. Right, so what I'm going to talk to you about today is the landscape around here. And it's really about the volcanoes. This landscape is extensively volcanic. And it has some very interesting features and unique features in New Zealand. And one of them is which, just Katanui South here, has been explored for diamonds. And unfortunately for you, nobody has found any diamonds there yet. But were they to do so, the price of your houses would rise significantly. As part of my teaching at the University of Otago, I regularly come up to Kakanui, and especially Katanui South here, because the geology really is absolutely, it's stunning, it's really special. So what I'm going to do is try and give you a bit of an overview of that, but we'll start, like, where are we in terms of the geological context. We'll step onto this field here, which is the Waitaki volcanic field. Anyone know where that is? It's here.
Down the road.
Right, so stretching across North Otago here, we have a province, a well-renowned volcanic field called the Waitaki volcanic field. And then focusing in, I really want to come down and talk a little bit about Katanui, which happens to be one of the geology of Katanui, and what it tells us about New Zealand is definitely one of my passions. So here is an example of Zealandia, and relative to Australia, Zealandia is about half the size. So today we have a couple of islands. We've got the, is that a point or something?
No, sorry.
That's all right. We've got a couple of islands, we've got the North Island, South Island. Most of you will be familiar with that. But what we actually realise is that if you strip away the sea, the Zealandia continent is really large. It extends over 1,000 kilometres south of the South Island, Out here's the Chatham Islands. We think of those as far off the coast, but they're not even near the margin of Zealandia. It's about 4.9 million kilometres square, and 94% of Zealandia is underwater. So we're actually a continent by our own right. We're not just a couple of islands, and that continent has old history that stretches back to when it was part of Antarctica down here and Australia. So we'll just grab a couple more seeds. I had no idea it was so popular. Questions already? This bit here? Yeah, absolutely. So we're like a high portion of crust, and surrounding Zealandia is the ocean, the floor of the ocean, and there's a steep drop-off between the two. You can see this is, go for it.
Okay, and how there's Antarctica, where is it on the actual map?
Where's Antarctica? Where do you think it is on the map? Or where would it be on the map? So it used to be along this edge of New Zealand here, and so Antarctica is way down.
No, on Zealandia, when it's attached to Zealandia.
Oh, it was along here. Antarctica was joined along this margin.
Oh.
And Australia was along this side up here. Okay, thanks very much. Feel free to raise your hand at any point. I guess we've got a 7 o'clock cut-off, so we'll see how we go. But thanks, guys. So, where are we? We've got Zealandia, we've got an undersea continent. Most of it is underwater, but scattered across, widely across it, are a series of volcanoes. These are stars down here. That's the Chatham Islands, Auckland Islands. There's something there that was volcanic. The Antipodes Islands. These are all the sub-Antarctic islands. They're all little volcanoes that poke through the surface and have breached the surface. Chatham Islands, volcanic. And then we get on to the South Island. And since the South Island had a long volcanic history, not geologically speaking, but you would say in the last, it's tricky talking about geological time because for me geological time, millions of years is actually a short geological time. But if we look at the South Island here, these green patches here represent volcanic systems. And it turns out that there's Dunedin, which is a very large volcanic province. We've got stuff in the Southern Alps here on the western side, Banks Peninsula, some inland Canterbury stuff, some volcanic rocks in Marlborough, stretching back about 100 million years, which is actually geologically quite a long time. And then of course the Oamaru area here as well. So whilst it's not active today, it was definitely active in the past. Oh, that's right. There's a zoom in of it, so we know where we are here, but just to stress to you that it's a very volcanically active area. Hopefully you can, well, I'm sure you can't see that from the back, but this here is, most of you will recognise this coastline. Right now we're situated right here at Katanui, and we've got on this map a variety of different rock types shown. And if you ever go to Boatman's Harbour, most of you will recognise that to be volcanic rock, or a kind of volcanic rock. And this is the Waitaki province. It stretches from the Morak Peninsula down here up to Maraphenua up there, and over to here. So this entire volcanic province covers an area of just under 900 square kilometres. So we don't just have a small volcano at Katanui over there. Shortly, we've actually got widespread volcanism right through this area, and for people that have looked at the ages of these by either looking at the fossils of the rocks on either side of the volcanic rocks, or by using isotope dating methods, they show the ages, for what it's worth, are about 34 million years old. So 34 million years ago, 34 million years ago, this area was extremely volcanically active. And we even get some younger volcanic rocks inland here, near the highway that comes through here, near Mount Charles, inland up here, and these blue areas over here, and even two little blips inland North Otago, which are part of a much younger volcanic field, the Dunedin volcanic group. So, the point of this is this area was extremely volcanically active and has been several times. In detail, this volcanic province has two types of rock. It has what we refer to as crystalline rock, which is the hard stuff you can pick up. You hit it with a hammer and it goes ping. And there's this other rock here shown in hatched green, which is a rock type that's dominated by a rock called tuff, Tuff, which is effectively ash. So we have this large area of crystalline lavas, or equivalent to lavas, and this eruptive material. So what I was going to do here was I was going to deliver this on my tablet here, and I would have been able to write these details on here. But for our context, for our volcanic field here, we've got two major rock types. We've got the widespread ash, and we've got this crystalline lava or equivalent component. The age of this volcanic field was around 34 million years old. And if you divide that by your age, you can work out just how many of you there would need to be to get that far, and the answer is, well, quite a few. The distribution, we go from Moeraki Peninsula up to Marifeno up there, and one of the more exciting things recently is that people have done, have looked at some of the old seismic data that's been collected offshore, and they found that the volcanic province extends well off into the Pacific Ocean here. It's just underwater. And the on-land extends, as I said before, in terms of area, if you calculate the area with which this volcanic province occurs, it's about 900 square kilometres. So the conclusion is that Oamaru and Kakanui area poses a major volcanic province in New Zealand.
So would you say it's dormant or extinct?
It's extinct. Does that please you, or would you like to see an eruption? The room probably falls 50-50 in terms of that. Eruption, lower house prices. Anyway, the shoreline. This is along the coast. I can't remember where this photo comes from, but this is something that's very prominently seen, and it's layered rock. And these layered rocks represent the debris, the ash from the volcanic eruptions that rained down and settled down on the sea floor. And this is the word tuff. And Kakanui, if we go out to the shoreline, well, we're not going to see anything right now, but if we were to go out in the day, you can see abundant layers of this tuff. We can go to places like Boatman's Harbour, just near Oamaru, and there is a really spectacular array of ash beds layered. And you can see them running together. They're all tilted slightly. I mean, originally many of them were laid flat on the sea floor, but then as the land has moved and things have shifted up and down, they overturned. And so now these rocks are tilted like this. Now, the feature of Boatman's Harbour is that it has limestone present in it. And what's limestone made of? Bryozoa. Excellent. The rest of you class have a little bit to work on. Yes, so it's made up of tiny little fossils. And these fossils, in some places, we get rocks, which is called a Tapatious Limestone. So it's where the bryozoa and the other fossil components were, before they were fossils, but where they were living, and then the ash rained down into that limestone. So if you know the age of your fossil material, you can tell the age of the volcanic material. Make sense? Yeah, so Boatman's Harbour exposes an awful lot of tough, but key point, it's mixed with limestone. Now, the limestones of New Zealand formed in hot or cold water. You can see my top student here. Warm water, significantly warmer than today. So the average water temperature at Katanui is 11 degrees or something. Let's go with 11 degrees. But we're talking about rocks that formed when the water temperature was something like 20 degrees. It would be quite pleasant swimming there, apart from the giant sharks and toothed dolphins and things that have been reported from this area. Anyway, it was a warm water environment. We've got lots of volcanic rocks that erupted underwater. More on that in just a moment. Boatman's Harbour again. There's that last image, the layered rocks over here. And we've got some tuff and some geological terms. And then we've got things called pillow lavas. Let's go a little closer. These here are pillow lavas. Have people seen?
No. What about
Yeah. No?
Where are they?
They're past the penguin colony and down on the shoreline. I don't know if there's access.
Not good.
No access?
There is access, but it's not good.
It's not good.
It's down there.
Right, so it depends on how keen you are to be arrested by the Oamaru District Council. Whether you see these or not, I reckon that it's probably worth it. These here are what are called pillar lavas. Just go back a little bit. We were here just before the track. I think the memory goes along the top and drop down over here. But here are the pillow lavas. Now, just bear with me for a moment. This here is a modern example of a pillow lava forming. This is underwater. The lava is flowing underwater and it forms like these bulges. More magma comes into the lava and forms another bulge. This video goes for a minute, but it's quite addictive. Like you can just sort of, oh no, nothing's happening. Oh wait.
So that's forming a crust on the outside.
That's forming a crust on the outside.
It oozes out.
That's right. So what we have today, this is obviously somebody recorded this because it's taken by camera. But we have this preserved in the rock. Through dark there. In the rock at Boatman's Harbour, we have this ancient process preserved, the pillow lavas. I want to draw something if I can. As I said, I would have done this on the computer, but we'll just do it as we can. So these are the individual pillows, these lobes here, and if I draw that, you can see that these lobes have different textures. The outsides are black. So that's a circle with another circle inside it. You'll be impressed to see that. But the outside is black, and it's what we would call is very fine grained. Like if you took a microscope to it, actually have I don't actually walk around with this in the field, but I thought it was appropriate. we've got a magnifying glass like this. If you put your magnifying glass up to here, you would see that these edges are very, very, you can't make out the individual crystals. And that's because when this magma was flowing into the water, it was reacting with the water and cooling very quickly and forming a crust, whereas the original basalt cooled much slower in the interior. And we have, so the same rock type, they have a glass margin. You can still see the glass again, microscope today. Yeah?
Okay, so you know, was the camera underwater or was it filmed on the top?
Underwater, there was a diver.
Was it filmed underwater?
Yeah.
So it's not under the sand.
Doing on top of the seafloor, so the magma was flowing out on the seafloor. The sea is up above, the surface is up above us, and somebody was underwater with their video camera. So this is a phenomenon that occurs underwater, and we can also see that in the interstitial areas, again, we have the limestone. So unlike today, which is pretty cold outside, I can't bring myself to take my down jacket off, but it was a much warmer environment, and there was lava flowing out on the seafloor. We also get these things. This is a Tokarahi, near Maraphenua, and they're columnar jointed rocks. If you drive down a road called Dip Hill, I think.
Yes.
I've even written on my diagram there, Dip Hill. You drive down the road and you can see this columnar jointed, it's not a lava flow, but it's I'll just draw it. If we have a series of layers of rock, and we have the sea surface up here, and there's a fish, not to scale, but the magma rises up, and sometimes it doesn't make it to the sea surface, and instead it flows out underground, within the layers in the rock. And this is called a sill, S-I-L-L. So at Dip Hill Road, this is a load of magma that was injected into the sediments, and then it cooled. And we can tell the way that it cooled because these columns formed at 90 degrees to the cold portions. So when this was injected, it was cold at the top and cold at the bottom, and so you end up with these nice columns forming.
So it's suggesting that it's been tilted from horizontal to
No, in this case here, this location, the magma was came up and was injected horizontally, and then cooled. It's cold up here and cold down here, and so it forms a series of columns. Yeah. So again, quite a spectacular occurrence within this volcanic complex. And water pillow lavas, you'll now be able to impress your dinner company with that. But the overarching picture with which this volcanic field probably formed probably looks like this. Here. This is Surtsey, which is an eruption that formed in Iceland or off the Iceland coast in 1963. And the day before this photo, or actually a week before this photograph was taken, there was no land here whatsoever. This volcano built up very rapidly, erupted, and has been inactive. I think it's still, I think it's inactive, and I'm not sure if it erupted after that event. But what we would have expected this volcanic field to have looked like is, well, your houses would be all underwater. Oamaru was underwater. There were lots of limestones forming on the sea floor, and just occasionally up would pop a volcanic cone. Magma stops, it erodes, breaks down, and drops down beneath the sea level, and then another one pops up in the distance. Yeah, I see there's a question back.
If you could, you could probably repay magma that has been busted over and like lava again.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch
So
that.
you reheat lava that's already been made into lava.
Could you reheat lava that's already been made into lava? In some cases you can. It hasn't taken place in this volcanic field, but when those rocks are buried very deeply, they can get very, very hot, and then they can melt a second time.
Humans, I think humans can't do it because the temperatures are really high that lava melts out.
No, we can do it actually. There's a really good YouTube video of some people frying. They made their own, heated up their own rock the temperature for the magma would have been about 1,000 degrees, and then they let it run down like a concrete mixer tube, and then somebody sticks a grill on top, and then they put some steaks on top of it, and so you cook your own. It's an expensive way to cook a steak, I think, but we can do it. We can simulate magma temperatures. Right. So we get, and here we have Oamaru 34 million years ago. There's no land, apart from a few little cones that maybe breach the surface up here. We've got our sills forming underneath the sea surface, and most of what we're seeing deposited is ash. So by far and away, the very fine material that makes up much of the coastline here, Katanui out here, represents material that's just erupted, exploded, and then it's just rained down into the sea floor. There are heaps of volcanoes in this area, or there were heaps of volcanoes, and we're talking about tens to, I don't even know what the upper number is, but we're not talking about one volcano, we're talking about lots of small volcanic events.
Let's ask, when the ash comes down to the ocean, did it trap a lot of that sea life? Because obviously there's a lot of fossils and stuff around here.
Yeah.
Is that the ash that caught them? Because you find a high concentration of fossils in some spots.
I think in some cases, yes. So here, in two cases I can think of. So in here we get the limestone and the ash mixed together, and that's if you were living on the seafloor, having a load of ash deposit on you probably is not a very good thing. But if you go along the coast, there are places where you can find little fragments, especially down at Lookout Bluff, down at Lookout Bluff to the south of us here. There you can find little patches of shells. And their interpretation isn't so much that they died when the volcano erupted, but they grew on the top of these eroded volcanic surfaces. And as those are breaking down, the fossils are being moved into deeper water. They're very light, very shallow water fossils.
Whereabouts is Lookout Bluff?
To the south of us here,
Does it end with the Bulgo Day?
someone else help me here?
I think it's just south of Waitaki River,
Yes. Or is it just north?
and it's hard to get at.
Yeah. Go back to our map here. Lookout Bluff is down here. And Katanui is here. Yeah. Bridge Point has some good rocks on it. But I mean, the gem is really Boatman's Harbour. Right. Since you're all interested in geochemistry, I thought I would include this diagram here. The details of this don't matter, except to tell you that the red dots here these circles here represent the compositions of the volcanic rocks in the Waitaki volcanic field. But I just want to illustrate to you that Dunedin, which has got probably more geologists than Oamaru does, and therefore there's a lot more of these green analyses than this volcanic field. Dunedin goes over this area here. There's some chemistry on that side, for those that care, and there's some chemistry on this side. But if I asked you, are they the same? You would say, hopefully you say no. The Dunedin volcanic field is chemically distinct from this one here. So what you see in Dunedin is different to this volcanic field here, even though that we know that the volcanic fields actually in part overlap. So it's not the only, the volcanism here is not the only volcanism in Otago, but it is distinct. You know, if you gave me a sample of, didn't tell me which volcanic field it was from, I think I would be able to do an analysis and then tell you. So we sort of move on to the second portion of the talk, which is Katanui. So this is Katanui South here. And when I bring students here, and I'll show you some photographs of that in a moment, we park up here and we walk down to the beach. This is an image that comes from Google Earth. And what you can see here is that it has a sort of circular shape. The most interesting location is just right up here. It's the shoreline. And this is the area here that has indeed been explored for diamonds, and I'll get on to why that is in a moment. But Kakanui South here is an old volcano. That's the shape of it, preserved there. The centre of the volcano is under where these houses are up here. Anyone living on that currently? There's nothing to worry about. This volcano is very much extinct. But just to tell you that the centre of it, where the big eruption would come out, is exactly where all the houses are today. So I'd say get rid of all the houses so we can look at the geology. This is a little video from that central location. And what you can see here is the layers in the rock. This is low tide, which is the best time to go here, because at high tide students get wet and they complain. But it forms a circular, those ones already complain, but it forms a circular shape, and the bedding, the orientation of the layers surrounds the central point of this Katanui area. And what we do is we bring our students out here. This was late last year, and they're out here doing some measuring of the orientation of the layers in the rocks. And so I don't tell them what's here when we come out here, they just come out here and they wander around and they try and discover what's going on. And they pretty quickly get it, that it's a volcanic area. And more than that, I was going to draw a picture of what it is, and I think I'll try and do it anyway. But it's known as a diatreme. And this is what got the South African diamond miners interested, is that, just bear with me for a moment. So here we are on the sea floor again. This is a cross section. We've got some whales or sharks swimming around here. And on the sea floor, there's this shape here. And this is the eruption of what Katanui would have looked like. Underneath the surface, it went down in a pipe, like this. So it forms a pipe, And what happens is that magma rises, or initially rose up, and when it hit the sea surface, the magma is hot, the water is cold, and it causes the magma to explode and break apart. And what happens is this thing quarries downwards and down here. So you get big blocks of debris in the inside of it, of this volcanic pipe. And in South Africa, these things here carry diamonds. And furthermore, we'll see this in a moment, in a slide or two's time, some of the components in here look a lot like what has been described from those diamond fields. So we have what's known as the surface as a maar, M-A-A-R, and then underneath that we have the diatreme, and it's just an explosive volcanic pipe. It's known as, here, it's known as the central area is known as the Katanui mineral breccia. And it was discovered in the 1800s, or recognised geologically in the 1800s. And this area was also recognised, I think it was recognised because there's something else here, much younger, quite concentrated here, not geological. What is it? Pardon? Limestone? Younger than that. So we're talking about really recent history, something in Katanui, or in the Katanui area that's soil. Moa. So soil getting a little bit younger, getting down to the moa. And so I think that people were coming here and looking for moa. And actually I had a student come on a field trip here, and he wasn't very interested in the volcanic geology. He was a paleontologist, so he's interested in fossils. And we're off looking at the rocks here, and he's often off around the other side, scrabbling away at the bank. And he comes out with this femur in the bank there. And it's about this long, and he's very excited that he's discovered another femur. So we took it back to geology, showed the paleontology professor, who pointed out that there were no chainsaws or skill saws or whatever it is that the freezing works cut the animals up with. And so it was actually a cow rock. If cows can be fossilized. Anyway, so enough from paleontology. What we're here to talk about is the Katanui mineral breccia, which contains, and this is another little video, and I have some of the components that have been delicately extracted from the outcrop in geological, by geologists out. But these components here, these are not lichen or alteration. These are actually fragments of, does anyone know what these are? Yeah?
The orange ones or the black ones?
You can answer whichever one you are.
Black ones are obsidian.
Close. No. We'll get there. The black ones are a crystal called amphibole. They're up to, well, I've seen them up to 10 centimetres in diameter. But these orangey ones here are fragments of Earth's mantle. So if we were to go down today, you look beneath your feet and you drive, or you were to go down about 30 kilometres, the rocks would look like this. That's what's underneath our feet. So this diatreme, the magma that came up in this diatreme, not only broke up the rocks around it, but it was actually carrying material from over 30, more like 70 kilometres beneath our feet. And so the Kakanui mineral breccia is well renowned because it contains fragments of Earth's mantle in it. You can go out and you can see it today. There's still plenty of material there.
So the fragments of mantle have a higher melting temperature than
That's right. They came up as solid. So the magma starts out very deep down, and it's a liquid, and so it makes it buoyant, so it's trying to rise up through the surface, and it picks up bits of rock in it, and they're coming up in this frothy mess. As it comes to surface, this magma intercepted the water, sea surface, exploded, spewed out a load of ash, and then quarried its way back down, locking in place these rocks. So these rocks here, this is a diatreme that formed over 30 million years ago, bringing up bits of what are underneath our feet today. We'll never go down there. 30 kilometres is far too much for humans. The pressures there would significantly reduce your size. Significantly. Well, that's the same thing, isn't it? And you can find, just on the outcrop, we've got our ash particles, or our smaller particles, which are these fine bits. But here are these bits of mantle. There is one of them there. They've got this term here called peridotite. If any of you know about the peridot gem, the green peridot gem, it comes from this kind of rock. It's not very good quality here, so you're not going to make a fortune out of mining. But that's the kind of environment that peridot comes from. We've got these rocks here, which are called Peroxinites. That doesn't matter, but if you go and you poke around, you find little rocks, little red garnet crystals in them. They also come from the mantle. We've got bits of basalt that blew apart, and some of these bits of basalt still have big crystals, big black crystals in them, and those are the amphibole crystals. So we have a really spectacular array, or you have a really spectacular array of deep rocks at the surface here. I have a wee selection of them here, which we can have a look at later if you're really interested. So let's just take a moment to work our way through this. This is there's the North Island, we don't need to talk about that, there's nobody goes there. Here's the South Island, and the South Island has about a 30 kilometre thick crust. That's what we're standing on today. And underneath it, one way to think about this is that how far is it to the core? Does anyone have any idea how far it is to the core? Yeah? How many thousands of kilometres do you think it is? A little bit too great, but about 6,000 kilometres to the interior, the centre of the Earth, about 6,000 kilometres. And the crust here, our crust, the stuff that we live on, is about 30 kilometres. And beneath the crust we have the mantle, and then that's what our rocks, those greenish or orangey rocks that come up to the surface represent, and then about 3,000 kilometres we reach the core. So Earth is basically a core and a mantle with a little bit of scum on the top here, which is the crust. And we live on that, and our only insights into this deeper portion of Earth come from what's in these volcanic rocks, such as at Katanui. And so today we know that we've got some confusing terms here, that this here sphere. It doesn't matter, but if we think about Zealandia as a continent, it has a crust and it has a bit of mantle here, down to about 70 kilometres. Underneath the Southern Alps, like an iceberg, the higher the mountain up here, the deeper the root. And so underneath the Southern Alps, New Zealand gets a little bit thicker. But it's from these inclusions in these volcanic rocks that tell us about the deep Earth. This is one of those mantle rocks. There's a piece of basalt here. This is my pen scale. You can see a nice shiny crystal. This is just taken just off the coast here. In fact, that rock it'll still be there. And you can see these little nice green crystals. And there's a snail, but that's much more recent. The rest of this fragment here represents what Earth's mantle would look like. Next one. Just just go a little bit closer. There's a snail there. The other thing that's really common there are crystals like this. So here is our scale. You can see we've got a 2 centimetre, 2 centimetre, and then 2 centimetres over here. We've got these crystals here of feldspar. Again, if you walk down to that central area just in the south head, you'll find, you can see these very abundant in the rocks. You'll find these black crystals, which are that word amphibole. You find those abundant in the rocks. And there are these crystals here, which are garnets, and they're quite large. Some of them are sort of 5 centimetres in diameter. Does anyone have any of those?
Sort of tiny bit.
Yeah, so there are little bits. You can get little bits today. How big's yours? Oh yeah, so a couple of centimetres. When Katanui was recognised, I think in about the late 1960s, these garnets here were quite highly sought after, and I've never actually seen a substantial one in the outcrops. It's like quite a lot of looking, but they have been there, and you know, when somebody finally digs a bit of a hole and puts a bit of explosive in there, you'll probably be a little bit more exposed. Anyway, you can find these gigantic crystals just in the rocks here, and so they're being carried up as well. We also have bits of the lower crust, so not only the mantle are coming up, but we have fragments. Again, the terms don't matter, but we have this volcano also brought up little bits. Again, areas that we will never be able to go to from sort of 20 kilometres depth. Even at 20 kilometres, you're quite small in that environment. And so here we have our Katanui locality. We've got our volcanic rim around it, and this central area just here is a great place to go and have a look at well, fragments of the interior of the Earth, really. Yeah, so I mean, a good if we just get rid of these houses here, and we've got a drill rig, and we just drill straight down under these ones here. That's no one's here, is it? Oh, you might get some compensation, but if we were to drill down, I'm not sure what street that is, but if we were to drill down just there, you'd be drilling into the centre of an old volcano. So, what lies beneath Katanui? Well, I won't bother to draw it, but we have this volcano here reveals that we have a crust with a particular type of rock in the lower crust called granulite. Beneath that, we get into the mantle with these greeny, orangey coloured rocks and black rocks with little crystals of garnet within them, and it tells us about the history of this area in geological time. And it turns out that some of the rocks are incredibly old. Some of those mantle rocks are over 1 billion years old. So there's ancient material sitting under here, sitting under Katanui. So what we can say in summary is that the Wairika volcanic field is a largish volcanic province. It's a series of ancient volcanoes formed around 34 million years ago, back when Oamaru was entirely underwater, and there were little fish, well, not fish, but there were little creatures living on the seafloor and in the water, in a warm water environment, and that gives rise to this undersea limestone platform. Portions of that volcanic field, such as the Katanui mineral breccia, are world renowned, and Katanui, of course, because of its huge amount of debris from the upper mantle and the lower crust, and it's the best location of its kind in New Zealand, and it's one of the best in the world. So there you go.
Far out, who did something new? Thank you so much, James, for coming and presenting to us today. What lies beneath our feet here, Katanui and Oamaru. And guys, I was super impressed. You made my day. You remembered about Bryce Owens from Earthquake and Stone Exhibition. Hurry up. That's awesome. We're just going to open up the floor now for some questions. So, if anyone just has a question to raise their hand.
You look out over there and you see like tons of peaks off around. Are they of volcanic peaks? That are not
It's
sure.
slightly I mean, they look like they're cone-shaped things that you can see on the Katanui range behind us there. So some of them are vents, but some of them are not. So yes and no. The reason, so some of them do represent pipes, but others of them are just fragments of lava that float over a wide area, and then all the way around them has eroded and broken down and been taken out to sea. We're left with kind of cone-shaped, apparent volcanoes. It's definitely volcanic material, but whether they were the vents themselves is not.
I'm a visitor from the next volcano down the coast. We've got big rocks of agate on our place. What's the process of formation of that?
You're from Waitaki?
Yeah.
Typically, agate forms as it's a fluid that moves through the rocks. It's quite a warm fluid. It's carrying quite a lot of silica within it, and then when it crystallizes, it forms sort of concentric zoned silica and oxygen quartz type. How big are your agates?
Oh,
That big. Oh yes. Oh, they'd be beautiful. And so they capture other little components. The fluid that's traveling through these volcanic rocks picks up other little bits and pieces, and so you get those different colours, and then they precipitate and they form in cavities in the volcanic rocks.
On that question then, what's the difference between an agate and a geode?
I mean, a geode
There's crystals
fills,
inside of
it's something that fills, I mean, agate can be a geode, my understanding.
Yeah, so the geoforming cavity inside of the
The geodes, people get geodes and they often don't know what's inside them. And so you crack them open and find crystals, but you'd find crystals, potentially you could find crystals of agate or agate
So they're much
inside.
the same.
The geo could be filled with other things inside agate.
That's right.
Yeah.
But includes agate.
Yeah, it could include agate or amethyst.
So I'm just looking west of here. We've got Typo Hill and Round Hill. Just are those volcano vents? And if so, have they come from the same deep source as the mantle, as the Earth's crust moved over the top, or is it separate?
No, they're probably not vents themselves, but right beside Round Hill, just to the east of it, is, I think it might be Round Hill Road, and then you've got Round Hill on this side, but on the other side there are some unnamed hills, and one of those has more of these mantle bits and pieces in it, so there is another eruption there. And the other place, if you want to see this kind of material, I probably shouldn't say this. Does anyone work for like Fulton Hogan or anything? But at the Alma intersection, there's an intersection, and on one corner, so here's the road, and there's a crossroad here, and just up here there's a monument. Yeah, So on that corner there's pillow lavas. On that corner there's some layered material, which I can't remember what it is. But on the corner that they've put concrete around, if you ever scratch in there, it's probably why they put concrete around it. But if you ever scratch in there, you can find more of this mantle material. But you can also find things like shark's teeth. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this.
don't advocate sitting on the road scratching for stuff. Safety first.
Speak for yourself.
Bit of butter.
But we can. My point is, you can find these materials in very sparse locations in this volcanic field. Katanui is the best one by miles.
Yeah, back there.
Yeah, what, in this volcanic field here, what was the main kind of lava that was put out? Was it like rhyolite or basalt or?
Basalt?
Mainly basalt.
Almost entirely basalt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So when that hits, say water, does that turn to obsidian, or is that if it hits snow or something really cold?
No, if it forms in the water. So those pillar lavas, the margins of those are more or less obsidian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They've got, not quite, like you're thinking of coarse obsidian, this sort of size, but it has little fine, small bits of it. It's made, obsidian is a glass,
Yeah.
so it's magma which cools very, very rapidly, and you see the same thing on the margins of those pillar lavas where they're extracted from the water.
Well, is the volcanic field associated with a plate margin or a hotspot?
No.
Anything else?
So not a plate margin, and it's unclear whether it's a hotspot. Probably not. Now that's the thing about the South Island volcanism, is that it's just erupted. It's not clear. So, does anyone know where the youngest volcanic eruption in the South Island is?
Auckland, is it?
Well, Auckland is still active today, so that'll be good for house prices shortly. But in the South Island, where is the? No. Well, I think you're just guessing now. It's Timaru and Geraldine. So both those two areas are built on very, very young lava flows, geologically young, in the last million years, or 2 million years, or something like that. So for geology, that's very young. And these volcanic eruptions, such as Timaru, Geraldine, the Waitaki, Deborah volcanic field here, Dunedin volcano, they've just erupted. There's no obvious trigger for why they've done so. And something's happened to cause them to erupt. But the South Island and southern Zealandia will have more volcanoes in the future. They'll just pop up out of the sea or through the land. Yeah. So they're, I don't answer your question, but I mean, it's not something, it's definitely not something to worry about. I wouldn't go home and have a sleepless night over it. I'd be more concerned about earthquakes if I were you. But the volcanoes of the South Island they just erupt for various periods of times and then they stop. Unlike in the North Island where there are chains of volcanoes, not the case yet.
What is asking about when you were saying back at Alma, there was shark's teeth and stuff, and there was pillar lava and stuff. I'm obviously more interested in paleontology and fossils. How do those sharks and stuff get trapped into there?
I think that the sharks themselves, their skeletons are not very well preserved, and but the teeth are. And so the material just ends up accumulating, the shark dies over there, and then it gets washed around.
And it just randomly got next to pillar lava and stuff?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think if you're a shark and you saw a pillar lava, you'd probably swim away. So it's more, my feeling is it's more of a coincidental thing.
But it's all very close to that area.
Yeah.
Like it's in meters.
Yeah, I mean, there are places, Sasha would know more about this than I do, but inland North Otago, where there are basically just accumulations of dolphins and penguins and whales, ancient ones, with teeth not we'd recognise, but they're in, the quarry is this, a bit bigger than this size, Quartz Quarry, and they've dug up heaps of them, and they just accumulate in these areas.
One other one on that is the Muraki boulders. Can you give us your interpretation of those?
Well, when I was a child, my father father told me, because I come from Dunedin, my father told me that they were fired out of volcanoes. But I've subsequently learned that was false, and he didn't know what he was talking about. What they are is that they're areas where something has been laying on the sea floor, and I'm not a paleontologist, so I'm 50% bluffing. And what happens is it gets a sort of a charge, and it starts getting a calcium carbonate precipitating around it, and then these things sort of get larger in place. They grow. They don't roll around on the seafloor. They actually grow under the surface of the sea. Am I close?
Yeah, they grow inside the mudstone. So the mudstone will be saturated. So the mudstone down Waitaki is around 60 odd million years. So it's accumulated over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And you'll get, the idea is that the mud is saturated with water.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a decaying plant life or whatever would create this mineral-laden pore water that would then accumulate with lime around the central nucleus. So there might be a shell or a tooth or whatever. And then over time, that just accumulates more and more, and they grow in place. And then they're just eroded out of that mudstone over long periods of time. So they're still eroding out of the bank today. And they're obviously not particular to Waitaki, but they're accessible there and they're really large there. And so that's why they're really interesting. But they do occur in other places as well.
Because on the inside, that hollow is all the crystals for the inside of the sea.
They've got calcite as well, and eventually that's what fills all the cracks as they come to the surface. The pressure from the surrounding mudstone is obviously released, and they slowly break open, and water can move through and deposit more calcite crystals. And then, you know, they're not at the surface for a great length of time, geologically speaking, until they start to fall apart, break apart, and then return to the earth. So it's kind of in a nutshell. That's my understanding. Does that sound right?
Oh, it's a sort of question answered, but I cut it off into someone else.
But I think it's the great thing about geology is that there's always people like James doing new research in particular areas, eh? So there's always, like I just discovered recently that this particular group up around here, down near Palmerston, has just recently been looked at being renamed as well. So there's always new discoveries. That's the cool thing about science. Then we'll take one more question and then we'll just wrap things up.
There are little fault lines going through this area. If they rupture, will that trigger a volcanic intrusion input?
I don't think so.
So they're not connected in any way, shape, or form?
Not directly. Not here. There are definitely places on Earth where magnets move along fault zones, but they're not really tied to the earthquake. They're just localized. They move along that fault zone because it's a convenient way for magnets to rise. It's a weak area for it to migrate. It's trying to break its way to the surface or rise to the surface.
So the magnet therefore here is in the greater depth than some other areas where it's prone to moving up with those structures?
Well, going back to your first question, would an earthquake trigger an eruption here? No, it wouldn't. This volcanic field is dead, and if you had an earthquake today, it wouldn't cause a volcanic eruption.
So just want to thank everybody for their questions. I think it's just kind of, you know, whenever you do volcanoes with kids get super excited, there's lots of questions, and I think we've just experienced the same this evening. So it's great to have everyone interacting and asking questions, and thank you for your wealth of knowledge and expertise that you've brought this evening. And just as we thank you, we have a wee gift of local goodies for you. So just our appreciation. Thank you very much.